Alrighty, week 3, learn together. Okay, so I am gonna do something kind of similar to what we did last week, but in this sense, it will be the same. Is that I want you to attempt to do this week without looking at my code. Now, I've already posted my code; it's already out there. What I really ask, and I noticed no one did this, so I'm going to assume everyone followed my request from last week, is if you do look, just say it, right? Because this grading that I'm doing for you on these learn togethers, I'm not grading, well, I am grading if you met the basic requirements of what was required from you for this week, for the learn together. But if you didn't do it exactly like mine, that's okay. If you missed doing the second command, which a couple of you did, I did mark off for that. But as long as you took an attempt at it, that's really what this is about. And that's what I want to say as we move into this week, is that it's really giving you the experience of taking a concept, the requirements for that concept, and implementing that into code. So, and this is what you're going to need to do, believe it or not, the week after this. So I'm actually recording this at the end of week 2, but it's for the week 3, and the first develop it project, which you needed to have at least described this last learn together, and this week we're going to work on it a little more. That is actually going to be due on the 4th week. Okay? And I'm going to talk more about this in the attendance, but it's really a lot that week because you need to have this done, and we're starting a new section, which is really important. So, but I want to also introduce, for those of you that haven't heard this term, because basically what we're doing is creating CRUD apps. Create the data, so like in his Node application where he gets the title in the body. We're reading it, right? We're actually being able to present that information back to the user, right? We're updating it. Now, in his case, he actually hasn't gotten to the place that he shows how to update, but I actually did it in my app, and I'll give you an example. And then delete. And then he showed us clearly how he used the filter method to delete items, his note items. So the update we'll talk about a little more, and I'll be, I won't be as maybe hard on that one, not hard, but as strict on that one in the requirements. But based on what you, and I don't want to say should have, but what we had hoped you had come in with, which is the 83 stuff, how to update items within an array of objects is definitely something we covered, okay? So, chat with me about that. But what I'm going to show you is I'm actually not going to, again, show you my code, but this time I'm going to show you my commands, because your commands are really your way with your naming, and therefore setting up the requirements for how the user interacts with the commands for your app. So they do basically represent the CRUD operations. So I'm going to walk through mine to show you my output. I still have a little bit of work to do on it. I'm actually going to create one more video next week for the develop it, the first dev 0 project, just so I'll walk you through my code. But for today, I'm just going to show you, and what you're going to need to do is do something similar, okay? So let me first just scroll up here and show you the learn together for week 3, the one I'm talking about, okay? So I've also broken this into 2 parts like last week. And this first part is, implementing these concepts for what we've learned, right? Setting up your own module code. I logically called mine email.js and require it in your app.js. And if you've named it something besides app, rename it, just follow the standards. And then in that module, write the necessary functions for loading and saving email, right? That's not that different than what we saw already. So you can follow that, just name it more specific to the email concept that we're doing, right? And then add the commands to read, delete, and list, right? And again, you can name them whatever you want. I really found that Compose wasn't like from last week didn't make sense once I went to do it. It really makes more sense to say send. But again, naming, it's just, sometimes I say some of the hardest things in computer science or programming is naming things. So it's true. Name it whatever you want. Just make sure you've implemented the CRUD concepts in here, right? So the second part, and this is really important, right? So our dev project, first one, is coming up really fast. And I want you to now, in your reply, do two really important things. One is to talk about the data you're going to capture in your JSON file. And I'm actually going to show you my JSON file and decisions I made about it. And then in your reply, also, list out your commands, right? And actually, creating a CRUD, but your commands that you're going to use to implement, right? The commands, like for us now, I did compose last week. I've changed it to send this week. Read, and I call, instead of list, I call mine inbox because it made more sense to me. So, but if you want to look at my starting off point from week 2 Learn Together, because now my link for the one that I gave you last week is updated for this code. And again, I don't want you to look at it until you've attempted this, because that's part of the work and the muscle that you're creating in your brain, is the ability to actually create something. Okay? So I'm going to switch over to my editor real quick. And in here, I'm going to first show you like my send command, right? So my node.app, app.js, send is my command. Here are my required sender email, receiver email, the subject line, and the body. Okay. So then when I, in my case, I wanted there to be duplicates. Okay. Because it makes sense. It makes sense from an email concept. And this is what you're going to have to think about for your own concepts, how you're going to do this, how you're going to handle it. Right? Because on Andrew's note.app, he didn't want duplicate titles, but I was fine with duplicate subject lines, right? And of course, you could send to the same people all the time. So if I do that, actually, this is one of the things I'm going to fix. One of the, we call it our to-do list. And I'll probably implement this more in the coming weeks, but it's like things I still need to do. But in this case, I should have and could have, and I would recommend for you when you do it, is output using that chalk. And you'll see this, I implemented this more in my next command, right? So let me show you now not my trash, I'll show you that. I'm going to show you my inbox, right? So this is going to show the inbox. So I could do it for either the sender or the receiver in this case, right? Because of the way the file is stored and just because of the way the data is. My command is inbox. And this is where I use chalk a little more to say received emails, subject, body, who is it from, right? The status. Now, status is something I haven't fully implemented it yet, but the idea is that if it's red, then it's R, and if it's N, then it's new, and I would actually have in my inbox possibly another property that would be if I wanted to see only new emails. Okay. So then sent, here's the messages that were sent. And I've also included this ID. So, and in my code, I just did a simple ID. If you came from 93, you remember we use UUID. And you're welcome to do that if you want. I just decided, and again, I'll show you my code next week, or I'll go through my code next week, but you can look at it. But again, don't do it until you've tried this, right? How are you going to implement it? And the reason I had to do IDs was I needed a way to specifically grab one email so that I could either delete it, which is, by the way, let's actually now do the read. So I do have another command for read. Let me just do this. But in order to do actually, I need to get rid of the whole thing because it's not by email, it's by ID, this ID number. So if I want to hit read, and if I read like this, actually I should have had a new one in there. I'm not sure what happened to that. I deleted one. So in this case, if I wanted, when I do a read, I actually end up updating the status. Okay. Oh, it's because I was the sender and not the receiver. That's why. Let me actually fix that. I'm going to run another send. This time, the receiver is going to be this account that I'm looking at. And actually, I just could change that. But the reason is, you'll see, actually doesn't matter. And actually, I used that validation, but now let me do the read command. Read, and now let's do email. Let's do rio@rio.com. Oh, what did I forget here? See, this is great. So actually, this is great because, by the way, this is where your help comes in, right? Missing argument ID. This is perfect. So it's almost like I planned it, but I didn't. Okay, so what I need to do is actually do an inbox for that. And the reason is I now have a message that is a new message, and that ID is 7. So now what I want to do is actually read that. And that's what I was trying to show you. Because again, I haven't fully implemented this idea yet. There we go. So actually, I want to read ID 7. Okay. Now, what that does is outputs the message, and then in here it doesn't show it, but if I run the inbox again for them, you will see that that is now read. Okay, and again, it's a status that I'm keeping track of so that I can figure out in my future iterations of this code how I will do it. So the last thing I could show you here is, because I've done my send is create, my read is my read. In this case, it makes sense. My read is actually also my update, because actually my inbox would be my read, right? And then I'm going to do a trash. So when I'm going to do a trash, that will actually get rid of the message. Okay. And then I'll actually get rid of that same one. And then I output. And again, this is where I need to work on my output a little bit, right? Right here. Okay. So the last thing I do want to show you is that how I did my file is I ended up, like I said before, is I created this idea of a simple index, and then I added this to the file, the JSON file, when I stored the information so I could use it for later. But you will see each one of them have an ID on it. But again, I'll go over the code for how I did that later. I just wanted to show you I made some decisions, and this is really my point. So part of what I had to make a decision for, as I said before, is how I wanted to store the data. I didn't, like Andrew did on his note app, I didn't care if I had duplicate subject lines, his equivalent of title, right? So you have to figure out for your own app how you're going to handle this. And what I would say is, don't do it the way Andrew did it, right? And that's part of what, and I will talk about, like I said, I have drafted the requirements for Dev 0. You can look at it. I do require you to take what we've learned in Andrew's course and through our Learn Togethers and implement something a little more, right? So like add some additional functionality that we didn't see. But I'll go over all that when I record both the code for this week that I've done, so that when you will know in more detail how I handled it. I haven't yet, and that's on my to-do list. I've done a good job of commenting this code, which I need to do. There's also another concept called dry, which is do not repeat yourself. And there's definitely a couple of opportunities I'm going to think about how I could, where I may have looked like I was repeating, and repeating means if you're doing the same code, you should figure out a way to abstract that in some kind. And abstract just means create a function that handles that. All right. Okay, enough for this. Again, 2 parts. I actually told you the points this week, so you have a better idea. And I really weighed the part 2 a little more heavy on this week, because it's really important that you now consider what data are you going to store in your JSON file, and then what are your commands that you're going to use, okay, for your app concept. Basically, creating a CRUD app. I hope that makes sense. Please reach out if you need anything. I am at Bitwise for an open lab on Thursday nights a little later. So if Thursday nights are a night you want to come in, please reach out to me if you want more detail about that. Have a great weekend. Talk to you later.